Wasn't quite sure if we were going to start another song. It's not every day you can say you started your day with Nickelback, so you know you're Canadian when. I'm really excited about today's session. We had some great panelists here with us. The topic's going to be fantastic, but we just have a couple of housekeeping items to take care of first. Today is day 2 of Career Bootcamp 2023, and this morning's session is called Creating the Perfect Post. Please note that this session is offered in English and French simultaneously. If you would like to view the French session, please return to the V-Expo, click on the agenda pour créer la publication parfaite, and it will take you to the French session. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. The Mi'kmaq peoples have lived here since time immemorial, and I encourage you to acknowledge the land that you are on as well. Career Bootcamp is the largest conference in the GC, and it is the only conference with the goal to support you and your career journey. As we move through today's session, please share your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. You can use the language of your choice. You can upvote the questions that you like by pushing on the thumbs up button, and our moderator will ask the most popular questions to our panelists. As with all Fin sessions, this session is being recorded, so you can go back and check it out at a later date and make some notes. If there's anything in the chat that you see that you'd like to copy down, if there's any links that you would like, they will all be provided after the session. Please note that the opinions and experiences of our guests are not necessarily those of the Government of Canada, but our panelists are well chosen to be able to share their voice with all of us. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Charlene to lead us through the session.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to our friends at Fin for putting this conversation together. I am really excited to be speaking with you all and facilitating this discussion with our panelists about creating the perfect post. Selfishly, I am a public servant who is looking to grow her online presence. And for me, this panel is going to help me figure out how to do that. Do I have to make brand new social media accounts? Am I able to feed into my existing ones? And how can I grow my audience with the content that I create while remaining within the values and ethics of where I work? I am so excited to be joined by our speakers today, Dr. Andrew Abella, who is an acting director at Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, and Stephanie Carr, who is a patent examiner at Innovation, Social, and Economic Development Canada. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. I would love to take the temperature before we get into our discussion of where our audience stands. I have a couple of polling questions that I wanted to share, and by all means, you can rate yourself 1 to 5, 1 being, I don't post, I'm not really that expert, and 5 is like, I'm fantastic, I'm an ethics extraordinaire, I'm just here to brush up on my skills. So by all means, let's look at the polls. Okay. Okay, so we have different we've got some different responses coming in. I'm excited. Let's just get into it. So like I said, I'm very interested in growing my platform professionally. And I'm learning how influential you can be when you post responsibly and use your social media properly. But when I look on social media, I'm really not able to find a whole bunch of public servants. How it usually goes for me is that I would meet a public servant and then I'm able to see their social media. But when I'm down the rabbit hole of TikTok looking for data-like content from public servants, I'm really not able to find anything. So Andrew, Stephanie, I wanted to know, do you guys announce that you are public servants on social media?
I'll start because I think Andrew has like a more complete answer. For me, I started my social media just as a baking channel. Like I'm a baker. I do some day in the life stuff as well. There you go. There's one of my cakes. So I started working with the government actually after I started posting on social media. And I don't really have work focused content, but I do a lot of day in the lifestyle videos. So it comes up, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I focus on it. I have been recommended from my managers and my bosses to not specify what exactly it is that I do, even though that information is publicly available online. Like you can go on LinkedIn and see what my job title is. They kind of just recommend that I say that I work for the government or that I'm an engineer, but not necessarily which department or the specifics of what I do. And it doesn't really matter for me because I don't really talk about work. So that's an easy thing for me to do because it's fairly separate. So
yeah, and it's really interesting for me because when I started working for the Government of Canada, I basically had never set foot in a Government of Canada office. It was in the middle of the pandemic. I was working in a very extreme kind of office supporting Dr. Tam to improve the Government of Canada's response to the pandemic. And I felt really alone. And I was working on these files and I knew that they had massive impacts for people across Canada, across the world. And I saw a huge gap in terms of being on social media and the public seeing what kind of work was being done in terms of the government's response. And so I kind of saw it in a few different ways. Number one was an opportunity to kind of provide the public with a window into the kind of work we were doing in government. With, of course, being careful with respect to not being too specific about actual files, but just giving people a window into why are behavioral scientists supporting the pandemic response? What kind of work are we doing? What do we care about? Why are we doing this? So number one, that was a good opportunity. But number two, it also gave me a good opportunity to actually connect with the community. I was working in my living room alone every day. I had never even set foot in the office of public health agency. But being on Twitter and actually communicating the work I do and finding people that were doing similar work across government was amazing. And I wouldn't have had that otherwise if I had not communicated to the public that I was a public servant on my social media.
See, that's exactly the experience that I'm looking for when I try to find other public servants who work in the state that I work in. So how, when it comes to values and ethics, how are you able to stay within those values and ethics when you do talk about your work? We all work at different departments, so our values and ethics probably are similar, but not necessarily the same. So how do you stay within yours when you do post about work?
One thing for me is, so I work in the patent office, so I'm reviewing inventions and patents all day. So when I first started posting, or when I came to work and they found out about my social media account, I had a meeting with kind of everyone who needed to be involved. And that's where I learned everything I need to know. So like, I guess if we're going to pull one takeaway from what I'm saying right now, it's that if you have an account, tell your manager, tell your boss, just chat with them about it. They're going to give you more helpful advice because like Charlene said, it's kind of different rules for the departments. So there's information online, but it's really helpful to have specific advice from your specific branch. So for me, that advice came down to because I'm reviewing inventions and because I'm an influencer and I receive gifted products and I do paid promotions, I have to make sure that there's a very clear distinction between what I do at work and what I do on socials, because we don't want there to be any perceived conflicts of interest. Like, let's say I'm reviewing a patent for Nike shoes and I get gifted Nike shoes. That's a big no-no. Obviously, that looks awful. So for me, the values and ethics really came in terms of conflict of interest and making sure that there's a distinction between what I'm doing at work and working with any companies kind of on the side. It'd be the same thing if it was just a side gig, because it really kind of is. But the main thing for me was learning that specific detail, because that's so specific to working in the patent branch. And the only way that I was able to kind of pull that out, I hadn't even thought of it, was by reaching out and just opening that line of communication with my managers and the higher ups. And the conversation went super well. It was very smooth. And now we have like a laid out plan, but I wouldn't have had that. And I probably would have made a mistake if I hadn't reached out and just opened up that line of communication. That was the best decision I made, so that I can make sure that I'm following the right values and ethics rules for my specific department, because it's such an individual situation.
Okay, so communication is key. I guess some of us are apprehensive to even say to our higher ups that we want to post about our work on social media. So it's probably a good thing that we do that. In your searches, or when you see people who are in the same field of work that you're in, have you ever run into any posts from others that have like made you cringe or give you the ick or secondhand embarrassment?
I can think of one like very public story about something, but Andrew, if you have like a specific personal example, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough. There's like different categories of cringe, right? So like on one hand, I see people posting, I guess, very personal attacks at institutions or people. When it's so interesting, I'm not saying I'm against speaking out against people or institutions at all, because I think it's very important to speak truth to power and communicate about how institutions and decisions that people make impact people. But I think the way you do it is so important. And I guess the way, when I cringe, I maybe not cringe, but like I react really kind of negatively to different posts. It's like when people do nothing but attack the character of people making those decisions, instead of attacking the ideas they're propagating, which are very harmful. And like you can focus on the ideas and the consequences of those decisions without attacking the people. I think I cringe whenever I see people just attacking people, you know, in a personal way, as opposed to what they do.
Got it. Steph, did you have anything you wanted to add? Just before I move to the...
No, I think Andrew covered that one pretty well. I don't have as much workplace stuff on my socials.
Perfect. Yeah, I try to be cognizant to make sure I'm not attacking any ideas when I see things, because me too, sometimes I see people post things and I find sometimes they're just asking questions in what they think might be a safe space, and it just ends up going haywire. So I definitely feel for some posters in those instances. But the reality is that sometimes when you are posting, you have to keep in mind that it's your own brand when you're posting. And even though this conversation is about creating the perfect post, I think it's good to keep in mind that you also have a brand. So I wanted to ask a little bit about branding. I had an interesting conversation with a friend who works in a private company. And the company she works at is pretty well known. And there's so many content creators who work for this company. And I asked her, like, how do you do any posts like this, like about where you work? And she said something really interesting to me, which was that she didn't want her post to become her personality. I thought that was really interesting. I'm curious to know, because what we do for work is just one facet of what we do. How are you able to post, but also keep your personal and professional lives separate? In some aspects, it could be that, you know, your job is a big part of who you are, but for others, it's just one minor part. So how do you balance that when you are creating your posts?
Maybe I'll jump in here for this first one, because Steph and I have a very different use of social media, and also probably consequently very different levels of popularity. I'll say that. But starting from my humble Twitter presence, let's say, for me, first of all, there's a bunch of different ways to use social media, and most of them are valid. The way I personally use it is a few different ways. So first, I'm a teacher. I used to teach at U of T. I am a scientist, and I'm a public servant, and I'm also a community builder. I try and use it with those goals in mind with everything I do. So if I'm talking about my work as a public servant at IRCC or at FAC, for example, I'm trying to like actually convey the work that we do because I think it's interesting and I think I have a unique perspective to share. So if you're thinking about using social media as a public servant, you should really think about like, there's probably a lot that I do in my day-to-day job that a lot of people don't know about. And they might actually be interested in that because it is fascinating, the kind of work we do. You know, when I'm thinking about my personal brand, I'm thinking just about like, not necessarily the kind of image I want to convey to people. Because to be quite honest with you, I just use it 100% authentically. Like, I'm not like trying to think about like, oh, if I tweet this, it'll have this effect on people or whatever. Like, I'm just talking about things I care about all the time. I'm sharing ideas that I care about all the time. If I read like a academic paper that I think is super fascinating, but like most of the people that follow me probably haven't heard about it because they're not scientists too. I want to share it and I want to explain it in a way that's really accessible for people to learn from and access. And in terms of like, you know, the personal brand, I feel like if I just convey myself in an authentic way, I will find my community and those communities will find me too. And I think that's the way I try and use social media to build my personal brand in that way.
Yeah, my take is like, obviously everything Andrew said is fantastic. I just kind of came into it in a different way, I guess. Like I started my channels, like I said, for baking, and I felt like I was very much so in a box. And I felt like I could only ever post cake videos. And then I started posting about myself and my work and triathlon and all the things that I do, because I'm not just a baker. I'm a baker, an athlete, an engineer, a daughter, a partner, like so much more to me than just what I'm putting out. And obviously one of the ways to kind of avoid being boxed is to be authentically yourself. And big thing is sharing things you care about, because people will see that you care about it, and it creates this like positive feedback loop of you get more people that care about similar things, and it's just a positive environment, and people like seeing people happy. So if you care about something and you share your passion, that picks up traction a lot more quickly. But the other thing that I wanted to add is it's so important for me to step away, because no matter how much I share online, no matter how much people are only seeing the video on their screen, I find maybe it's the nature of TikTok and YouTube, but I get a lot of negative comments too. And it's hard, but I have to remember that they don't know me. They see the posts. And a lot of times I think people forget that creators are humans. And so I can be as authentically me as I want, but they're still only seeing a 1-minute clip. So just reminding yourself that you're not what they see, you are who you are, and, you know, try to show them who you are. But sometimes you just got to remember, they don't really know me. I'm going to do my best, but it's not quite, it's kind of easy to forget, especially when people are being mean and stuff, that they don't actually know you as much as you try to share. It's important to have that time away as well with the people who do know you. So a touch on keeping it real on social media, and a touch on spending not less time, but balancing your time so that you get those authentic experiences in person as well.
I love that, Steph. That's a really good point to mention the importance of unplugging when necessary to try and remain authentic. That's so, so good. I have just one more question before I bring the audience in on the conversation. How do you, when you're being authentic, how do you still try to create posts that add value to your audience? Because let's say, like you said, there are so many facets to who you are. And let's say you do a post just about your work, and now that's all your audience wants to see from you. And they no longer care that you bake, they don't care that you like to be outdoors, and that's all they want to see. How do you combat that?
I could talk forever about how awful algorithms are, so I won't get into that side of it. But the cool thing about the internet is there's always someone who wants to hear what you have to say. So even if, you know, for me, I feel like people need a video of me decorating a cake, or they don't care, but then I'll post the video about work. And even if it only gets 1% of the usual views, that's still a couple people who it touched and it mattered to them. So I try to think more about, like you said, the value of the post itself rather than how I think it's going to perform. And so when I talk about myself and my job. And I like to touch on being a woman in engineering, because I feel like there's a lot of women out there, women in STEM, who struggle with identity and feeling like they deserve a place. So I like to talk about being an engineer because I want to hold that space for all the women in STEM and say, yeah, we're here. I'm here. You can be here too, kind of thing. So even though those posts don't perform as well, I try to think about the post itself. Even if, is there one person who's going to find value in this? And, I'm sure 10,000 people want to watch me decorate a cake, but if there's 3 women in high school who see one of my posts that say, I'm a cake decorator and an engineer, and they go, oh, maybe I can do both of those too, then to me, that's important, that's valuable, and it's worth it. So kind of for me, it's a big thing is trying to separate algorithm and views from value and what I want to push across. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's a really good question. From my perspective, I want to say, like, a lot of what I share is with the idea in mind that I'm sharing this with a purpose. So, an example of that is, like, as I said, when I was starting out in public service, I had this weird job, and there wasn't a lot of behavioral scientists in government that talked about their work. And so when I look back on, what I was doing, I was thinking, like, why isn't that the case? Why are people not sharing this? This is, like, really interesting stuff. I think the public would be interested in this. There's also, like, misconceptions building. And so one area that I thought was a good value add is, like, to just mentor scientists who are potentially leaving academia and were interested in how to be a public servant. So what I did is I compiled all the kind of resources that I developed in my chaotic year supporting the pandemic response into a document that, like, anyone can read and understand and see where I'm coming from my perspective. And hopefully that helps them too. And what's really cool is, like, as a result of that, a lot of scientists reach out to me regularly to just have, like, a 30-minute mentorship session where I'll just talk about what my path looked like and how to try different paths for your career in as a scientist, let's say, or in academia. But in terms of value add into, like, social media, I'm lucky. Like, I have, like, a personal social media presence that it's really just my life with respect to work, and also my past as a scientist too. But I just really post anything that brings me joy or things that I'm passionate about. Sometimes that's sharing my honest perspectives about policy decisions. Sometimes that's about uplifting the voices of others and kind of shining a light on what other people are saying that I really view as really important to me, and from different communities as well. That's super important to me. But other times it's just sharing, like, I went on a hike and I saw a cool animal, or I saw a hawk. Like, that stuff brings me so much joy, and I just want to share that as well in my social media. Yeah, sure, it gets like 10 likes or whatever, but, like, I don't care. I'm just sharing what brings me joy, and I hope it brings joy to others as well. So those are the kind of ways I try to bring value.
That's amazing. I love that. Thank you so much. So I wanted to open it up to questions just before we end the session. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them, and I will share them with our panelists.
I was just reading the Q&As, and there's one that I think I have a really good answer for that I'm just going to break the rules here and jump out and say it. Because someone was talking about how they use their personal social media to connect with people on a personal matter and to make people laugh for content creation. Their question is, how could that impact their image in the government? And I have, like, a really good personal anecdote on this. So just going to quickly run it through. A few, like, when I first started, I actually contacted by, like, our department head, like the highest up people, because they found, they got an email from someone from my YouTube comments where I'd been battling with them in the comment section, which I know for my mental health, I shouldn't do. But we were talking about sexism, and they were saying it doesn't exist. And I was like, yes, it does. And, and I will get into it. I'll get heated. And then I was really nervous that my boss wanted to meet with me about that. I was like, I'm going to get in trouble for being too vocal online. And the conversation ended with them saying, we're worried for you that this person was able to contact us, because clearly they were able to find some personal information about you if they were able to contact us. And we're worried about you getting negative attention, but we support everything you said. We love your channels. And we want to do whatever we can to make sure that you feel comfortable continuing to post. So that's obviously, again, department specific, but if you're nervous about posting your like personal content creation, talk to your boss. Like I said, open that communication line. They actually were like cheering for me battling in the comment section about sexism. Like they're people too, right? So unless your opinion is like, I want anarchy, they're likely to also at least see your perspective. So don't be worried about it, but definitely start a conversation is my advice.
Charlene, can I also go rogue and respond to this most voted question? I'm super intrigued by it. Okay. Is that okay? Thank you.
I go for it.
Okay. It says, is there actually value in having social media in terms of employment? I deleted all my accounts a couple of years ago since I didn't see any benefit. I still have LinkedIn, but that seems more useless to me. I have so much to say about this. Okay, so how to say this? So I use LinkedIn very differently from how I use Twitter. First of all, LinkedIn is a great place to talk about ideas. A lot of those ideas on LinkedIn might seem a bit empty and vapid, but like there's also some really good content there. I use it to share resources and stuff like that. And what happens is with the algorithm is it shows you the community of who should be kind of connected to you. So in terms of employment opportunities, in government of Canada, it could be like potential acting opportunities seeing your work. When they see you post things about like the kind of work that you do, like for me, I do behavioral science, maybe there is potential career opportunities for hiring directors that could reach out to me. So concretely, this is kind of wild, but one time I posted on Twitter that I got a new job at IRCC and I was very excited about it. And because I talk about the issues that I talk about, because I kind of post about the intersection of science and social justice. The deputy minister at the time at IRCC actually saw what I posted and ended up recommending me for a work opportunity at IRCC to work on a project that I was super passionate about. And she just saw that and knew that at the time. And I just think that's so incredible. Like that would not happen at any other time if I was just like, not on social media. So you get a certain amount of visibility. People are seeing what you're posting. Yeah, sure. Sometimes that can be a good thing, but we don't always have to be scared. There's like a lot of positive to be had here. And I think that's really incredible. I
feel like it shows your like soft skills almost too. Like it made you stand out from other people they might have asked for the opportunity. So just to add, like it's not necessarily a bad thing. It shows a different side of you. Like even being asked to talk on this panel, we wouldn't have had this opportunity if we weren't posting. Little things but it just like adds to you and your value as a person working for the government.
I could go on for like an hour about this, about how many job opportunities this has led to, or just social opportunities, community opportunities. I see it as very, very valuable. I'll just say that.
Well, you know what? I kind of want to know, and I see some questions here too. Should we as public servants be making separate social media accounts to post? Like that's something we should be doing?
My opinion is hard no. They're going to find all your accounts anyways. There's literally software where they can find everything you've ever signed up for, even if it was with a different email. My opinion is don't bother. Unless it's like an account where you're like, let's say you have an aesthetic Instagram account where you only ever post flowers. Then like, sure, make a separate account. But if it's just because you want to have like not your past be on there, I think that's not worth your time, my opinion.
Perfect. I'd like to pass it back to our friend at Finn to close this out. Thank you so much, everyone, for bearing with me. This echo was not happening before you guys got here. I promise.
It's true. Charlene did pass our tech test earlier. So I'm sorry, Charlene. I know that's frustrating. And I'm sorry to the audience if you weren't able to hear all the questions, but you are here to hear the answers. And I know that you heard those. I'm fangirling over here a little bit because I follow both of these colleagues on social media, and I was so excited that we got them for you today. So thank you to Stephanie and Andrew for taking the time to speak candidly with us about your use of social media. We have one final polling question for the audience. The results of this poll won't be shared, but what we'd like to know is, was this session a good use of your time? Hopefully, yes. Hopefully you want to know more. Don't put no if it was too short. You probably enjoyed the first half hour. So if it's something that you really enjoyed, we probably will add a little bit more meat to it in future sessions. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. In addition to this session, later on today, we will be discussing networking for introverts at 11:30, networking to stand out at 1, and regional career development in a hybrid world at 2:30. There's also an opportunity to network with other GC employees that will take place on WonderMe from 4 until 5. And the links for all of these sessions can be found on the VExpo on the agenda. All the resources shared during this session, as well as the recording, will be shared on the Federal Youth Network wiki page so that you can review it for future reference. So thank you to everyone for coming today. Thank you for being patient with us. This was a great way to start the day. I don't know if we're going back to Nickelback, but enjoy whatever tunes Alexa's about to play for you. Have a great day, everyone.